I am Melonie Jorgensen, and I live in Eagle Point, Oregon, having just recently moved here. This is fun. Move is pretty exciting. And currently enjoying the incredible health that years of a lifestyle change have provided for me. Originally, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1947, which makes me 68 years old. And my family moved, us 5 kids, here in 1955 in our Dodge station wagon. And I still can remember where everybody slept in the station wagon. It was a pretty exciting adventure. And yeah, we moved in 1955. I was 8 years old when my parents decided to make the move from Cincinnati to Southern California. And I lived there basically until I was 18, and well, actually older than that. I moved to Oregon when I was 26 years old, and I've lived here ever since. Some of my favorite pastimes, it's interesting because they're very active. I'm a very active person. I love to cook. I love to hike. I like to entertain. I love to dance. I've just recently, about a year ago, started West Coast Swing dance lessons, which is just amazing. I go dancing about twice a week, so I love that. Met a lot of incredible people that way and really enjoy just the exercise and also the empowerment of learning something new, a new skill. It's been great. And but I love to hike and explore new trails that I haven't been on before. Bike riding, I enjoy that. And now decorating my new house, being involved in that as well. And spending time with family and friends, that's huge. That's huge for me. And being able to keep up with them, I think. My son, Dr. Gala, Thaddeus, really enjoy it when I have the opportunity to travel with him. And that always involves challenging hikes and things that probably on my own I wouldn't quite do. And he says, "Mom, you can do it, you can do it." And I know recently we hiked Coco Head in Hawaii, and it's just like 1,100 steps, 1,200 steps straight up. And it's like, I don't really think I could do that. And yeah, you can. And I thought, well, I'll go halfway, and if I can't make it, we'll turn around and come back. And I made it all the way up, and it was awesome. It was really great. So yeah, being really active is very important to me. When I was about, 5 years old, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. And I pretty much stayed with that occupation desire forever. I just loved children, and I wanted to teach school. Partially because I didn't enjoy school. School was tough for me in the early years, and I just thought school should be fun. And I could make this. I remember thinking that even in 2nd and 3rd grade. This could be a lot more fun. And someday I'm going to be a teacher and make it fun for kids. And I held on to that desire. And so when I was 18, I graduated from high school, but with not very good grades. And I mean, I graduated, but I couldn't get into any particular, school I wanted. I wanted, San Francisco State, and but they wouldn't accept me because my grades weren't good enough. So it was going to be a junior college. And I thought, it's junior college. And by then I felt pretty demoralized. Like, I don't know, I don't know what I'm thinking about being a teacher. I barely graduated from high school. So I think I'll become a hairdresser. That seemed like a good alternative. And because the high school I went to, not too far from there, was a beautician school, beauty school. And I would talk to some of the ladies on the bus that were going to that school. I thought, oh boy, in 6 months, and they look so cool to me. And I'm 16, 17, seeing them, and they look so cool. And 6 months, you can be a beautician and have a job, and make money. So maybe that's what I'll do. And my mom, gosh, I'm so thankful, because she shared with me pretty quickly that was a mistake. That she said, "Melonie, you've wanted to be a teacher your whole life. And I'll tell you what, you stick with it. So you have to go to junior college, that's okay. Maybe you can't even take a full load. Maybe you need a tutor, class by class, but you just do it. Because when you're done, and if the normal program takes people 5 years, it takes you 6 years, you've got this for a lifetime." And my dad would say, education is something nobody can ever take away from you. And then my mom sweetened it a little bit by saying, and if you graduate from high school and you get your teaching degree and you still want to be a beautician, we will help you with a loan to buy your own, salon. Well, my mom knew she was never going to have to make good on that promise, because, yeah, I once I got into college. And yeah, it was tough. First 2 years, junior college, and just like Mom said, couldn't take a full load, and I did have tutors, and some of my toughest grades that I worked the hardest for were C's. But as I finished that, and as I got into state college there, I started doing better, and I figured it out, and got straight A's in my master's program. So, I just had some growing up to do. But thank goodness I stayed with it, because I was a teacher then for 30 years. I taught kindergarten through 6th grade as a teacher, and then substitute taught through through 9th grade when I retired. And I also became part-time staff development, which meant I got my master's in supervision, so I trained teachers, and I traveled the Northwest bringing special programs and creating, different programs in their classroom, and then became a mentor for teachers. And when I retired from 30 years of teaching, I was hired by school districts to come in to help new teachers, to mentor new teachers, and as well as teachers that were struggling, and to help them set up plans of assistance and to grow that way. So really rewarding career. I loved it. I was always glad when Friday came most of the time. Sometimes it was actually, gee, I have a whole weekend, I want to be teaching. But most of the time I was happy when Friday came, but always excited Sunday night, going back to work. I loved teaching, loved it. And the variety of grades I taught from K through 6 was fun. But then after that, when I retired, let me back up, I was on disability. I did have to walk out of my classroom for a while due to some illnesses that I had. Might share some of that later, but yeah, so I was on disability, couldn't work for several years, and then went back part-time. But then when I retired, I found tutoring was great, substitute teaching was neat, but now I love what I do. I work with my son, Thaddeus, Dr. Gala, as a health coach, and I love that. And it's kind of like using my master's in supervision again, because it's helping people make changes in their life so that they can achieve the health goals that they want, they want to set about achieving. So I kind of feel like it's come full circle. Pretty awesome when I think about it. When I think about how I grew up and how, we ate, what our diet was like then, and our health and all that, it's really interesting, because my dad was a meal was not a meal without dessert. You had to have dessert. So I grew up with definitely a sweet tooth, and we always had sweets. In fact, we'd come home from school, and a snack frequently was a piece of white bread, butter, and sugar on top. That was a snack my mom would give us. Like, one slice, one piece, but you had to have it by 4 o'clock so you didn't spoil your dinner. And even I might have for lunch a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, sliced carrots, but there'd be homemade cake or homemade chocolate chip cookies in that. We always had dessert. And but then my mom drew the line in certain processed things. We didn't have potato chips in our house. We didn't have soda, except once a week you had soda. So there were some good things about that too. And lifestyle also was very active, because we usually lived by Little Mountain, where the weekend she'd be pushing us out the door to go hike or to go play in the woods, and so it was very active that way. Not a lot of variety. Thinking back to the food again, not a lot of variety. My mom, and I don't know if this was typical in the 50s, but Sunday night was roast, and Monday night was meatloaf, and Wednesday night was spaghetti and meatballs. There were certain things that you had every night. You knew what dinner was, and so that was pretty typical. And it wasn't until I got out on my own that I began to experiment and realize that, wow, there's a wider variety of vegetables out here, and discovered fresh vegetables, because ours were pretty much canned vegetables and things like that. Growing up, again, as a family, the middle child in 5, we were all pretty healthy. I'm trying to think about how my mom or dad actually managed health, and I don't remember it being much of an issue in terms of, I remember we took vitamins once in a while, but not all the time. I think it was more about, and yeah, we got sick, we got the flu, we got colds, things happened to us. I know, it seemed like I was always getting a filling. Every tooth in my mouth, I think, is filled. Probably had something to do with my high sugar diet growing up as a kid. But I think that I just don't remember it being that big of an issue of, you know, really emphasizing good health and you do this for health. Nothing like I do now. Or I think people are so much more conscious of that. But consequently, we were pretty active, so you know, being overweight wasn't an issue. You know, I know my mom, my grandmother had diabetes. So my mother was pre-diabetic. And so she was careful, I think. It's interesting because we still had the desserts, but again, that was never a snack in between meals, you know, well, other than I just said the bread, you know, that we'd have. But there seemed to be some control on some of that too. But I just don't remember being that big of a deal. Not much emphasis on that. Well, it's interesting when I think about our traditions growing up and still with my family, my extended family, it is about food. We have a lot of traditions around grandma's cinnamon rolls that it's like it's almost not an event if somebody's not making and bringing these cinnamon rolls. You got to have them. And then French puffs, and that are like basically these buttery rolls that are rolled in, you know, in cinnamon and sugar. And chocolate chip cookies, like I said, cake. I'm sure my mom made a box cake every week, chocolate chip cookies every week for all of us. So, but the traditions were always around these special foods that you had, which were, like I say, it's interesting because I haven't thought of this, the cinnamon rolls, the French puffs, Aunt Madeline's chocolate pie, fudge pie, my mom's fudge. My mom grew up with taffy, that it's this pulled, they called it pulled candy. And it literally was as she'd make it up, and it's just sugar and cream, I think. But to make it taffy, you had to, like, once you mixed up, you had to pull it. And you had to stretch it and make it into this taffy. And so we as kids grew up helping make that. And it was always at Christmas. So you're stretching and helping Mom stretch this candy. And the more you stretched it, it gave it the consistency, the creaminess. And then she'd roll them out and then cut them in these pieces and store them in these cans. And they had to store for about a month. So it would be, you know, right around Thanksgiving, we'd be making them to have it at Christmas. I haven't thought about this cream candy for a long time. It's really interesting because just recently my brother went back to a family reunion, went back to Kentucky, and someone had made the pulled taffy or cream candy, which however it's called. And I didn't happen to go to that reunion. And he comes home and he brings some. And so he says to me, okay, Mel, I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to give you something. And so I go, okay, I have no idea what my brother Mike's going to do. I go, okay, do I trust him? It's my older brother. I don't know. I wouldn't have closed my eyes 40 years ago with him in the room. But I said, okay, what are you doing? So I closed my eyes. He said, put your hand out. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I put my hand out. And he puts in it something and he said, I'll wrap your hand around it. And I wrap around it. And you know what? Even though I haven't thought about pulled taffy or cream candy for 50 years, 40 years, I knew what I was holding in my hand. Talk about a tradition around sugar. I said, oh my gosh. And I opened it up and looked at it. And it was a very little piece he gave me. I don't want you to know. He wasn't giving me a much, but he said, you know what that is? I said, of course I know what it is. And I ate it. I ate it right then with that. He's like, oh my gosh. And the memory came back. And I don't eat sugar. I don't eat this stuff. But with him standing there, it was like it went, and it melts in your mouth. And it's incredible. And all these memories, you know, that are associated with food that conjured up in me this emotional attachment that I had to this, all the family memories and pulling the taffy and everything. So I think that is one, and thank you for asking that question, because it's actually a very pleasant memory when I think about that. I'm glad I remembered that. It's a very pleasant memory when I think about that experience. So those were great. And all of us kids in the kitchen pulling the taffy and making that happen and knowing that, wow, in a month from now we're going to get this. So, yeah. Emotional attachment to food. Yeah, pretty big. When I was living in Southern California and I started teaching when I was 23 years old and had my first classroom. And at that time, you know, we're talking the early 70s, and environment was a really big thing. And I put that into my curriculum so that was part of my science program about how, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. That wasn't the term then, but I knew then, we've got it. The world is going to pot, literally. We have to figure this out. And so I started teaching that. I was teaching second grade, and I started teaching the kids this. And as the world around me is getting smoggier and smoggier in Southern California, and there'd be some days you couldn't see the mountains, and more days like that. And so it was a real scary. It was scary seeing what was happening to the environment. And I would do these experiments with the kids. Take a piece of white paper and put it along the roadside, and we'd come back later, just a couple hours later, my students, and we'd go look at it, and then they'd go, "Oh my gosh, look at this, the paper's brown." I said, "Yeah, what's that from?" We talk about smog and what it's doing. And so to get out of it, I moved 6,000 elevation. I lived at 6,000 elevation for 2 years. I moved up, I was again Southern California, I moved up in the San Gabriel Mountains, an awesome little hamlet called Wrightwood. And I was single, and I moved up there, and I rented a house, and I loved it. I thought, well, I've died and gone to heaven because it was perfectly clear there. However, every day I had to drive down to Southern California, back down to sea level to teach, and then I'd drive up. So whereas other people could live there and get a little more complacent, every day, Monday through Friday, I was reminded of what I was driving into. And it wasn't too bad in the morning, but you'd come driving out and you'd look back down in the valley in this thick layer. Weekends was great. I never wanted to go down there. So I made the decision that I'm going to look for some place to move. And Oregon. Oregon is what I started hearing about, reading about. I want to move to Oregon because that's where I can have the trees, and and again, being a teacher, you can pick where you want to go. And then I met my then soon-to-be husband. He was assigned to me as a student teacher, and he was from New York City. And he came to move to Southern California, and that to him was a big move. And I remember as he was in my classroom helping me, and as a student teacher, we're working together. And now I think it was like maybe my second or my third year teaching. And he said, so we talked about how do you like Southern California? And he said, well, I'm thinking of moving, Oregon or Washington. Well, there we were. Both of us living in Southern California that had the dream, Southern Oregon or Oregon, Washington, because we wanted clean air and we both wanted children. And a year later, off we were. We were moving up to Oregon. And we bought some land and got married. We bought some land. We bought 23 acres in the hills of Southern Oregon. And I got a teaching job, teaching a little school with 5 teachers, a little school called Elk Trail, and just an awesome little school. And we lived in a tent while we, on these 23 acres, it was surrounded by BLM, no electricity. Tried to get electricity, but it'd be way too expensive. So we had a generator, and that was an experience. And lived up there for like 20 years, and with the snow and a wood cook stove. By the end of, when I left there, when I moved away, we had 3 wood stoves, counting the wood cook stove, to heat the house. About 10 cords every winter we went through between the cooking and the heating. And it was an incredible experience. It was wonderful. And again, we were doing on a real tight budget. That's where our boys were born, 2 sons. Dr. Gala, Thaddeus, and his brother, his older brother, Stephan. So it was a great kind of wilderness family type experience. It was beautiful. And again, being on a budget, when it snowed, it wasn't like we had a plow or we went and had somebody plow the roads. We walked in and out. And those are some of the most incredible experiences. After a big snowfall, you bundle up and you have to snowshoe down to get to the car to go to work. But the pristine and the quiet of it is just pretty amazing. Not that I want to repeat it, not that I wish I was doing it now, but it, again, was one of those experiences I'll never forget. It was pretty amazing. When I think back about how much I loved living that lifestyle and loved living on the land, I also am aware that it's a tremendous amount of work. We worked hard. And my husband worked hard, I worked hard in that, well, first of all, there was the whole new, in the 70s and the early 80s, people started becoming more health conscious in terms of what we ate. So a big garden was part of it. We raised our chickens. And I can remember those chickens, for example, raising them and letting them be get out and get free range and be healthy chickens, and then butchering them. And because we didn't have a freezer, keep in mind we're we don't have electricity, generator, so it's not ongoing electricity, so everything had to be canned. So we had this huge garden, so things weren't frozen, they were canned. So even the chickens, we'd butcher them, I would help butcher them and clean them and cut them up and cook them. Cook them in the pressure canner and then can this cooked meat. But then in your pantry, you have all this cooked chicken ready to eat for stir fries or for, any soups and everything. So that was awesome. A lot of work, though. A lot of work. We'd do that to 40, 50 chickens a year, plus everything else we canned, all of our tomatoes and green beans and all of those things. Not to mention maintaining our house and weed whacking. I used to spend a lot of time weed whacking so the boys could have a place to play baseball out in the fields. And I'd weed whack sometimes until it got too dark to see. So I taught school, September. Actually, I'd start my classroom in August until June, and then it started on the ranch. Then it was raising the pigs and the chickens and the garden and doing that. But my best part was taking a break. We had a pond, and they knew that Mom's going to float around in the inner tube with them so they could swim every day in the pond from 12 to 1. And I looked forward to that break as much as they did. And still lots of hikes and things we would do. Usually go for a walk every day. But yeah, a lot of work goes with that kind of a lifestyle. I think that's important for anybody who's thinking about living out the simple life. I'm not sure the simple really describes it. Yeah, but a wonderful experience. I remember after I had lived up there for about, I guess, I have to remember the numbers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's just say about 13, 15 years, so it's definitely this lifestyle, is happening and we're into it. And my boys I have to think about that, their age, how old they were, but yeah, maybe like 4th and 6th grade, something like that. Anyway, I'm teaching full time, but it's during the summer. It's one of those summers, and my hands started tingling. I'd wake up in the morning with both hands just tingling. I think, well, that's kind of weird. And I thought, well, maybe it's because of my weed whacking last night. That was my first symptom, just tingling in my hands. And then, I'd be up for a while, and then it would go away. Then it started to be every morning I'd wake up that way. And then the tingling would last longer, enough that now I'm a little concerned. Like, why should this be happening? So I thought, again, it's weed whacking. I'm doing it. So I bought some real good heavy gloves that they tell you, those guys that do those, certain, work that they do in construction, they wear these big gloves so to cushion my hands. Well, anyway, none of that helped. None of it changed. And then pretty quickly, I went back to school then in September. And in those days, we had whiteboards and, chalkboards and charts, prior to, other ways to share with kids. So and I remember lifting my arm up and going to do some writing, going like, wow, my whole arm, it's hurting to lift. It hurts. And what's that coming from? And then writing, pre-computer, and I'm writing, going like, my lesson plans and going like, I just felt like my right hand was just still the tingling in both hands. It hurts to write now, it hurts to lift my hand. It was progressing. And all of this happened within weeks. Within weeks, I'm feeling this happen. So now I'm getting scared, like there's something wrong. And it wouldn't go away. It was constant now. And then there'd be an ache that would go with it. So now it's late September, and it's starting to interfere with my job. And then I start going to doctors, and it's hard to find a doctor back then, in the 80s that knows how to deal with this. Late 80s, I guess it was then, early 90s. And they kept sending me to somebody else. And, well, we don't know what it is, and well, you have tendonitis. So they'd wrap my elbow up, or they'd want me to wear, a wrist thing. So I'd do all that, for, a month. And, it just kept getting worse and worse. And then it started spreading and going down the right side of my body. It's hard to explain. But there was an ache then that started happening on just my right side, but from my arm, my shoulder, down my back, and my right leg. Just this whole side of my body it got to be chronic, to where my mood changed. The symptoms that I experienced with fibromyalgia are just so wide-ranged. The aching of the hands, the bending your hands, just moving fingers, to go work in the garden, to do something like, forget that, lifting your arm, to brush your hair, to use a blow dryer, curling iron, just forget any of that. Writing, just like everything you try to do, standing for long periods of time. Standing, the lower back just starts to ache. And the only thing you can do is lie flat, that I could do, would be to lie flat, lay flat, you know, on heat, you know, and just, okay, and then everything would subside and you could get up again for a little bit longer. So low back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, headaches, migraine headaches, overall, just overall pain. It's, you name it, it was a symptom. And then the migraine headaches, the blindness that would come with that, and the nausea. And sometimes the chronic pain just in itself would get so bad that it would cause nausea. My biggest fears when I was in the pits of my fibromyalgia is that it wasn't going to get better, that this was going to be the rest of my life, that they had lost their mom, that we weren't going to be making any more great memories. There weren't going to be, you know, every Mother's Day we went for a hike. There were going to be no more Mother's Day hikes. Gosh, when they had children, what kind of a grandmother was I going to be? Was I going to be able to get down on the floor and romp with them? Was I going to be able to join my family for anything, you know? I just saw it pretty bleak, that there really was no future. You know, having someone who's just disabled or sick. And also, in addition to the physical, I think what somebody has to remember is that all of us, any of us can end up in a wheelchair for a variety of reasons. I don't think it's being in a wheelchair that makes life so horrible, because we see many people that are inspiration of how rich and full their lives are from a wheelchair. To me, it's that being in a wheelchair with chronic pain. And if you can't get rid of that pain, I don't care if you're standing, if you're sitting, if you're lying down, the chronic pain is what robs a person of quality life. And that's what fibromyalgia does. It's that chronic pain. That's the biggest fear, to think a person, you check out. You just can't live a life with chronic pain. That's not like living, it's not life. When I was taking medications, and keep in mind, if there was a magic pill, I wanted it. I was so miserable. And if there was a medication I could take, I would take it. So I was experimenting with them. But the side effects, actually my headaches increased for a while. I became very tired with some of them. And I would have a lot of stomach upset, irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea. I just didn't feel good, and I just felt worse. And then I began to think about, well, something that's making me feel worse as I'm taking these medications long term has got to be horrible. And I would start to ask my doctors about side effects, and I'd start reading labels, and those were scary, you know, to read, like long-term use. And here I was in my 40s and thinking, if this is forever that I'm going to be taking these medications, it's just scary to think about the side effects of those. I got to a doctor, and Dr. Naris, who I believe still practices here in Medford, Oregon, as a neurologist. And I went in to see him, and of course I'm crying, you know, by then. It's like, somebody told me maybe you can help me, and I don't know, nerves or whatever's going on. And he says, you have fibrositis. That's what he determined it to be. And he found that my body was riddled with trigger points. He could press certain areas that should not be painful, that were painful all over my body, even though mostly this was all on my right side. He could find, he says, your left side is equal, even though it's not affecting you in the same way. He pressed these points. I go, oh my gosh, it's horrible. So, and again, keep in mind, I'm trying to teach, and I'm missing days of work. I'd come home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd soak in the bathtub. I'd go to bed. I couldn't do anymore. So my family started seeing me check out. You know, I couldn't really even make dinner. I'd say, well, this is what I think you guys could have for dinner, but I can't do it. I can't do anymore. So he said, you need to get into physical therapy. You need to do this, do this, do this. He started giving me a list of things he wanted me to do. And I thought, well, okay, I'll try that. Well, you can imagine trying to live up where we did, where we heated our house with wood. I cooked with wood. We had all these animals we were taking care of. I'm working full time. I have 2 children I'm raising. And as it is, to where I work and back, it's a good round trip of half hour. He wants me to drive into town, which is going to add another one-way 45 minutes onto my day. So come in there and see him at 4:30, or a physical therapist, like, how am I going to do that? And I tried it, and it was just even more stressful. He called me at home. Now, how many doctors will call you at home at 7 o'clock in the evening? I'll never forget that phone call. Dr. Naris, he calls me, he says, Melonie, I've been thinking about you, and this isn't going to work. This is just making it worse. This is your fibrositis. Again, they now call it fibromyalgia, but then fibrositis is not going to get any better with all the stress. And it's just making it worse. So what we're going to need to do is you really need to take a leave from your job, because even just the job itself, it's too much. You've got yourself in this. Nothing can take time to heal. I said, I can't quit work. Financially, we need me. We were still trying to get this house and maintain. I said, it's impossible. The thought, when somebody presents that you're going to lose your job, it's just, I can't do that. And he said, you don't have a choice. That's what you don't realize. You're going to get worse, and you're going to get worse very quickly. You need to find a way to walk off your job. How about part-time? I'll do part-time. No. You need to stop work, and you need to concentrate on stretching, exercises, physical therapy, relaxation, meditation, all this stuff. And I'm going it was so foreign to me. So foreign as I've described my life as being. I just couldn't picture me in that life. I just couldn't picture it. And I get emotional remembering it. It was a really, really tough time. Really hard. Because at that time, I felt like my family needed me. They were depending on me. And now I'm this huge liability. Not only can I not make money for the family and bring it in and cook their meals and do their laundry, now they're worried about me, So it just, I really have empathy for people who get, much worse, things that, fatal diseases and things like that, or that they get, their family has to deal with. It's just horrible. And here I was in my 40s, and it happened so quickly because my first symptom was in August, and this is October. That's how quick it happened. It's in October, and here he's telling me I need to go off my job the end of October. So the next day, I'll never forget this. So I remember telling my husband what he said. He said, well, if that's what you have to do, it's what you have to do. We'll figure it out. I'm going, figure it out? We're not going to, how can we figure this out? The next day, it's my whole left side takes on the same symptoms that my right side did. If I wasn't convinced before, literally, my left side, all the same pain, everything down my arm, this arm wouldn't work, my leg, so it was my entire body now. And it's almost like Dr. Naras had cursed me or something, because he said, it's going to get worse. And within 24 hours of that phone call. And, it was just, and I thought, he's wrong. It's not fibrositis. I have bone cancer. And so I called him back and I said, it's on the whole other side. I think there's something through my body. I want some tests done. I think it's worse than this. It's not just trigger points. It's something really serious going on. And so he said, well, we can do that. We can do that. And he said, I also think we should test for lupus. I've been thinking an MS. He said, I'm thinking other things too with that. Anyway, all those tests were run as they can run, and it showed nothing. Showed nothing. I remember waiting a whole week for the diagnosis of lupus. And it was a form of lupus he was testing me for that I wouldn't have seen Dr. Gala graduate from high school. So that was real scary. By then I was off work. I did leave my job. The school district was awesome. The teachers donated sick days, as many as they each could do, and they gave me, I got in addition to the sick days I had, I got almost another 6 weeks worth of sick leave donated to me, which was amazing. So that helped us financially, because before you can get disability, you have to be sick for 6 weeks. So I was sick for 6 weeks, and this kicked in, and then I did get disability, which was 60% of what I had made, but that was something. I was fortunate to be able to have that in my job, and I still had health insurance because of my husband's job. So that was huge. That was really huge. And so I was off work, and I was going through everything we could do, but nothing was changing. And I would have this little sign, because everybody come home from work and school, and there was this in the kitchen. Because they'd come home and so, how are you, Mom? How are you doing? And it was just, I didn't want to talk about it and make it the topic, as if I could have them not think about it. But I'd have this sign up. I'd have little 3x5 cards, and they'd have numbers on them. And if it was a 1, Mom's feeling great. And you saw the 1 up there, I'm feeling good, everything's good. Because I would have some days where gosh, I feel better. I feel okay. Now, not perfect, but compared to what I had felt. Like, I can still be up. I can be with the family of 5. I'm done for the day. I'm gone. I'm already upstairs and I'm in bed. So they would see these numbers. A 3 would mean, I can't help you with your homework. I'm still up. I'm helping, but I'm on the edge. I feel really sad when I think about that. Not guilty, because I didn't do anything for that, so it's not like a guilt I feel, but I feel so sad when I think that at that time I felt so sad. That's what my boys grew up with. I want to come back to that in a minute, though, but I felt really sad that that's what they had to grow up with. Coming in and, from school and see what number mom has. And I remember one time being out on a walk, because my physical therapist said you have to walk, and so I'd go for these short little walks, and it would be slow, one foot in front of the other. It would be agonizing some days, and stop, and turn around and come back, and the dog with me, and dog kind of looking at me, is this all we're going to do? We're going to do this crawl out and back. And I can remember one day in particular that if wishes were granted, my life would have ended that moment. Because I said, take this from me. Take this from me, because I, at that point, didn't believe I was going to get better. And I since found out fibromyalgia was in my family. I had a cousin that had it, and she always seemed very fragile to me. I had an aunt in it who ended up in a wheelchair. My doctor at the time is telling me that we don't know how bad this is going to get. Fibromyalgia is not always debilitating, it's not always degenerative, but for some people it can be. It can get worse, and that's why you have to really stay at it, because if you don't, it will get worse. You could end up in a wheelchair like, my great aunt Emma did. So I asked the powers that be, the Creator, to end my life. I said, just take me away, because my family would be better off without me. Just send it from me, because the pain was just horrible, waking up and going to bed with that every day. It's just, in fact, when I talk to some of my clients as a health coach, I have to be careful I don't get too immersed with them. It can almost be post-traumatic, because they're describing it, and I'm right there with them. I'm going like, oh my gosh, the memories can come back, and I go, yeah, I get it. So, thankfully the Creator had other vision, a whole different idea that I could not even begin to see. I'm feeling sorry for my children. I'm feeling sorry for me, for my husband, this whole thing. And yet there was a whole nother plan, I was offered the disability, and that was so much money was coming to me every month. And then they said, oh, by the way, we're going to have every 6 months, we're going to have a review with you. Every 6 months, we're going to come to you, and you convince us you're still sick, and then we renew you for another 6 months. I said, okay, fair enough. But as I started thinking about it, I thought, that then encourages me to stay sick. And on one hand, I know that I have to fight this. I have to stay in the game. I have to be strong. I can't give in to this disease. If it's true, it's fibromyalgia, and the more I do, I just know that I can stay active. But if I'm afraid that this money that's going to come to me every 6 months, that might take more precedent. Anyway, I thought, I don't want that. I don't want this every 6 months. And so I wrote them a letter and asked them for a one-time settlement. Do you offer one-time settlements? Oh, well, of course they do. They just soon write me off. I could have had an attorney. I didn't. I just said, offer me a certain amount and let me still have my insurance, but offer me a certain amount, my medical insurance, but offer me a set amount. And then you can be done with me. And they did. And looking back at what I was risking, it was a very small amount of money. If I was looking at a lifetime of not being able to work, which they offered it, I took it. And I'm sure they thought they offered it to me thinking it was negotiable, that I was going to come back with a higher amount. I didn't. I just said, okay, I'll take it. That's better. So I took that money, and I bought a really efficient wood stove to heat the house. That you literally put wood in it in the morning, and it's good for the entire day. So that my family, when they left, because I couldn't even lift wood to feed the stove during the day. So I thought that's important. And then remodeled the kitchen for a wheelchair. Made it more open, made a counter, did different things so that you could move around it, remodel it. That's what I used the money for. and said, okay, so now I don't have that money anymore, and we're just going to have to live on what we've got, and we'll do it. And I set about getting well. And that's the direction I went in. I'm going to get well. Sometimes I wonder what it was like for my sons and my husband going through all of this. Looking back, we sure could have talked about it more. I don't think I sat down with them and said, how are you feeling? What are your concerns? What are your fears? That would have been important to do. I was barely surviving. So I don't remember any calls, any talks like that happening. I do remember, especially though, my son Thaddeus, a couple of things that he said. You know, Mom, when there's a star every night, that first star you see every night, and if you wish on it, then that wish comes true. And every time I see the first star at night, Mom, I've always made the same wish. But now I'm not going to get my wish. I said, well, do you want to tell me what that wish is? And he said, yeah, because it won't come true. So I can tell you now, I always wish for all of us to be healthy and happy our entire life. He said, you're not healthy and you're not happy. And I don't know if he remembers that conversation, but I remember him saying that to me. And I remember saying to him, you keep making that wish. You keep making that wish because I'm going to get healthy. I am going to get healthy. And you keep making that wish. And he said, okay. I remember that. And then I did. I just, you know, it wasn't maybe till years later that when, you know, I discovered chiropractic. And that was huge to me when I discovered, because, you know, and I know different things work for different people. And physical therapy, I know, is an awesome thing and has done wonders for many, many people and so forth. For me, it was chiropractic. That's what made all the difference for me, almost from the get-go. I went into a local chiropractor, and because he had assigned massage. And I thought, well, I'd come back from a day in town, which totally exhausted me, and I saw this sign, massage. I thought, maybe I can go in and get a massage. And he said, oh, our massage therapist isn't here. He was there, and he said, let me, so I walk in, and he says, well, I said, I need a massage. And he says, well, you know, what are your symptoms? What's going on? And I shared it with him, fibromyalgia, how all this time I've been off work and all this. And he said, I think I can help you, but I'd want you to come 3 times a week. I said, well, I'm not doing a lot else. I think I can do that. And it was, thankfully, it was like 10 miles from where I lived, which where I lived, this 10 miles to anything, that was pretty close. So I did. I went to him, and within a month, I started feeling a relief I hadn't felt. Of course, again, we were dealing with the symptoms of my fibromyalgia, but that was providing me with some relief that I hadn't felt and gave me hope, and I was able to walk now a little bit more and able to do more things. Well, I know, looking back, my son Thaddeus saw those changes in me. You know, he's in junior high, and he sees Mom doing this, and he was the one that frequently said, so I'm going to go for a walk. I'll go with you, Mom. He'd walk with me. My pace, what I could do, but he'd walk. He'd walk with me. And he would, even in the woods, started clearing some trails for me to make interesting places close to the house to walk. Literally. He'd go out there and make, you know, clear some areas. Saying, I've got something to show you. I've got a new place for you to walk, Mom. I cleared this, made a path for you right down by the creek. And I'd go down there. It'd be great. So I'd make that part of my walk. And with his love and energy, I still think about that he had given that to me. So to think again about how this affected them, I'd say profoundly, there's no question. And especially my son Thaddeus, who then later, when he was going to school, he didn't know what he wanted to do. He didn't know what profession, you know, he was going to be. And he graduated, you know, top of his class, was valedictorian, straight A's literally from first grade, when they started giving grades in 3rd grade, all the way up, straight A's, just really disciplined and gave him his all to whatever he puts his mind to. And so he could have done anything. And he said, well, I guess I want to be a teacher because I love coach. He was a 3-sport athlete and all of that. And he said, I think what I'd like to do is be a coach, but I also like to teach math or science, kind of like what I had said. He said, you know, I see kids sometimes in math they struggle, and it doesn't need to be that hard. And I'd like to be one that can get to them. So I think math, and I think, or maybe a science teacher, maybe both. So he's in college, and he's doing this. and he's going to be a coach. So he's got his plan. His junior year of college, he calls me. He says, Mom, I changed my major. It was like in the fall. I said, oh, you changed your major. Yeah, it's not going to be education, or coaching anymore. I said, what are you changing to? He says, I'm going to be a doctor. Doctor? It's the first I'd heard of that, a doctor. He said, yeah. He said, because, and I said, well, tell me what you're thinking about that. And he said, well, I'm taking my most favorite class, anatomy. Now, again, he's in his junior year, and anatomy is required to be a coach. You need to have some of these classes. So I love it. I love it. This is like the human body. It's fascinating. It's like I haven't thought about this whole, and I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I'm going to do. I'm so excited. I'm going to change everything. And I said, well, that's really exciting. I could hear the passion and the excitement in his voice that I hadn't heard before. So I was excited for him. I thought, well, what kind of a doctor? And I remember his words, a doctor that cannot prescribe medications. You got well without medications. And I know medications, side effects are sometimes worse than the disease you're trying to cure. So I want to be a doctor that can't prescribe medications. And Mom, chiropractic gave you your life back. I think I'm going to become a doctor of chiropractic medicine. So how did my experience affect him was obviously so profound that not only he went through that and saw how agonizing that was for us as a family, but then saw what happened through chiropractic with no medicine, how he saw me get a good portion of my life back. Now, I still had migraine headaches. I still had flare-ups. I still couldn't write for long periods of time. There's still lots of side effects that I had that would come and go. But I was so much better. And he saw that. So that's the part that's interesting. When I go back, and then I go fast forward, when I look back, I had no idea that this was the gifts that was going to come from this fibromyalgia. When I'm asking that my life end, that my family be able to go on without me, it's like fast forward, like, oh my gosh, what an incredible gift. It's interesting for me to think about where I was at that point when Dr. Gala, Thaddeus, decided to become a chiropractor. I was better. Not like I am today. Like, let's say 100%, which is what I consider my life today. I'm 100%. At 68, I keep getting better, it still seems to me. So I'm 100%. I was probably with chiropractic, and let's think about when I was really sick with my fibromyalgia, at my worst, I was at 10%, 5%. There was no life. I mean, what is it when you're bedridden? Some days you can't get up, and then you have some days that you can get up out of bed for a few more hours. I call that 5%, 10%. With chiropractic, my life got up to 60%. 50, 60%, which is huge. It's huge when you've lived your life at 10%, 5-10% for years, and now you're up at 60%. The migraine headaches are much less. They still happen, but they're rare. Or you can go get, whenever the muscles and everything really gets bad, you can go and get some relief with chiropractic, and which I still went to chiropractic a couple times a month, to maintain that. So I'd say I got up to 50 or 60% when he was going to go to school, when he was going to become a chiropractor. When he went into chiropractic school, we established this. We never talked about it, but it just sort of came up that he'd call most Sundays. I'd say 3 out of 4 Sundays he'd call. And it would always be the same time, 7 o'clock, and Sunday morning, because it's 10 o'clock in Florida his time. And sometimes he'd be weeding in his garden, because he immediately planted a little garden where he was, renting while he was going to chiropractic school. Or he'd be out on a bike ride, and he'd have his earphone in, and he'd be talking to me while he's riding his bike or going for a run or whatever. He would talk to me during these times. But I got used to this phone call. I'd have my herbal tea ready at 7 o'clock in the morning, and first half hour he'd share with me everything that happened at school, what's studying, boards or whatever he was getting ready for. Some of his girlfriend relationships, all these fun things that mother and son could talk about. And then the next half hour would be him talking more about, okay, well, let me tell you what I've learned. And I'm thinking that this might have implications, Mom, for you. And I said, what do you mean implications for me? And he said, well, Mom, I just think you can get better than where you're at. I said, well, like by doing what? And he said, I really believe, Mom, you can get back to 100%. And I'm like, wishing on a star again? Okay, let's wish on the stars. Yeah, let's keep making that wish. But it was something else he was talking about than just wishing. It was like, I'm going to make this happen. And I said, what specifically? And I don't know when this happened within his, because again, chiropractic 4 years. I don't know when this happened, if it was 6 months into the program or a year into it. But he said, I really believe it's nutrition, Mom. Nutrition, I believe, is a component. We are what we eat, and I believe, and I thought, nutrition, how is what I'm eating? I'm eating pretty healthy, right? I have a garden, and I'm trying to keep a garden going and fresh vegetables, and, I bake my own bread, and I don't know, seems to me, I drink skim milk, and, seems to me I'm doing pretty healthy by what I know. And he said, I think it's a combination of nutrition, of eating healthy, and supplements. And supplements? Well, don't you get enough vitamins and good things just from the food you eat? And so it was foreign to me, but he was thinking about it. I said, well, that's cool. You kind of think about it. Well, it ended up, fortunately, that he was taking classes from the most renowned nutritionists in the country. And becoming on first name basis with some of the other great ones that he was reading their books and then getting online with them and emailing them, and Dr. Lauren Cordain and just different people like this that he became very involved in. And he would even take extra classes beyond the chiropractic classes, and he'd sit in a couple of times, repeat classes. So like, let's say Dr. Seaman, who taught at Palmer, chiropractic college where he was going, taught his nutrition class at 9 in the morning and again at 5. Dr. Gal would be there back again at 5. He'd sit in on as many times as he could. And then he would just sit and spend time talking with Dr. Seaman over and over and reading extra. It became his passion. Besides training for an Ironman, which he did complete an Ironman during that time. He'd be at the Y at 4:30 in the morning, working out to do a swim. That just gives you an idea of the discipline and the dedication for him for good health and all of that entailed. But I started to believe that, yeah, there might really be something to this. I mean, maybe he really is going to figure this out. Because he would say, there's no reason why you should have these flare-ups, Mom. These flare-ups are still happening, every 3 to 6 weeks you're going to get a flare-up that sometimes sets you back for 3 weeks, which it would do. Or these migraine headaches, you're still getting a couple of those a month. That's not right. You're getting all these sinus infections. You're getting, that shouldn't be happening. That's not health. There still should be something we can do. But again, keep in mind where I was. So to me, it's a walk in the park compared to where I was. And I'm pretty much average by then too. A lot of people, they're in their 50s. That's kind of, it's all just part of getting old. You get older, these things, you have more aches and pains. So I remember the phone call. And again, it was one of those Sunday mornings when he said, Mom, I have a list. You have pencil and paper? This is what I want you to do. I want you to take a 30-day challenge. And for 30 days, these are the foods I want you to stop eating. And we're going to do a test, and we're going to see how this affects you. But stop eating certain foods. Okay. What are they? Okay, I'm ready. And he starts listing all these foods, and I think he's crazy. He says, no grains. No grains. So what are you talking about? Grains. You're talking about wheat, and you're talking about all grains. You're talking about like bread and things I bake. He goes, right. So I'm not going to eat any more bread. I have toast in the morning. I have a sandwich for lunch. He says, you're going to do that anymore. For 30 days, I'm not going to eat bread. Right. And milk. No dairy. No milk. No cheese. Cheese was my snack, my to-go-to snack. Right. No cheese. I'm thinking, wow, I don't know. Yogurt. Yogurt's healthy. Everybody knows. I used to make yogurt. No more yogurt. You get the picture. It's just more and more of these things he's giving me, and I'm thinking, I'm really thinking maybe he's like gone the other way. I'm like, okay, so he thinks that me going off all of these foods for 30 days, that I'm not going to have my migraine headaches, I'm not going to have a flare-up. And he goes, and I started balking. I go like, Thad, I don't know. I mean, do you know anybody who's done this? No, but I'm doing the research, Mom, and I'm finding out, and there are some studies out there that have been done. And I said, but you don't know anybody personally. Mom, you're going to do this. And I'm like, 30 days. Mom, 30 days. And if you know my son, you know how he talks to me. He doesn't talk to anybody on the planet like he talks to me. Mom. When he says it's like, oh, give up. You know, he's going to be relentless until I give in. It's like, Mom, oh, I'm doomed. Okay, what do I have to do? He says, all right, 30 days, make this list and do it. I go, I will think about it. I thought it was too much to commit to right then. I'll think about it. So he called, and I know he's going to say, well, I'll call you next week. So for that week, I played around with cutting back. Let me see what this is really like. So I won't have toast and a sandwich. I'll have one or the other. So I'll cut back on that. And gosh, I had oatmeal. I thought oatmeal was great. And all these foods. It got to be a real, 30 days seemed like a real long time. So I didn't do real well that first week. And he called me and he said, well, what did you do? And I told him. And he said, Mom, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying stop it. And I said, well, what am I going to eat then? He said, all right, I'm going to do it too then, Mom. We're both going to do this. We're both going to do it. You too, you're going to do this. You're eating, college food. What are you going to do? He says, no, we're both going to do it. This is what we're going to do. We're eating lots of lean meat. And so we start putting it together. We're going to eat a lot of fruits. We're going to eat a lot of vegetables. And we're going to eat lean protein and fish. And so we planned out what we were going to eat week by week. And it actually started coming together. Rather than telling me just what don't eat, we planned what we were going to eat. I said, all right, so this is what we're going to do then. We're going to make the meats, we're going to have the vegetables. Okay, all right. What are we going to have for breakfast? All right, let's have leftover dinner for breakfast. Leftover dinner, what's that mean? Well, if you make chili or you have soup, you have that for breakfast. Okay, that's going to be kind of weird, but okay, let's try and do that. Week by week, we did it. 30 days, I began to feel, well, first I dipped down. First I felt worse. After the first week of doing that, and he called and I said, this isn't working. I need more carbs. I need more of my potatoes, my rice, and I need bread. I'm feeling real weak. I tried to go for a walk the other day and I just had to cut it short. And he goes, Mom, your body's just detoxing. It's getting used to different foods. Me too, Mom. I'm feeling some of this myself. Come on, you can do it. Hang in, another week. Let's go, 1 week at a time. Okay. Well, the end of the second week, I started feeling a little bit better. Okay, maybe I'm not going to get out of this right now. And maybe it is going to be okay. I'm a little better. Well, by the end of the month, I actually had more energy than I had had at the beginning of the month. Keep in mind, there was this dip, but I came out. I started feeling better. I started having some idea. My pantry started looking a little bit different. I hadn't bought any milk for a while. The bread was in the freezer. I hadn't made any rice, any potatoes. And it was about the 6th week, of course, a month, and we'd commit to another month. And it helped that I knew he was doing it too. And so at the end of this, about 6 weeks, I realized I hadn't had a migraine headache. That was really cool. I said, you know what? I'm going to start writing down whenever I have a migraine headache. Because I haven't had one now. It's been several weeks. So that was pretty exciting. So I think you get the picture. Gradually, my health began to improve to where today, my fibromyalgia is complete 100% remission. And I follow those suggestions that came to me 9 years ago. I follow it 99.9%. And the reason I say maybe it's 95%, because I do go out to restaurants, and I'm not exactly sure all the oils that are used, so there are a few deviations, but basically I'm following this very closely. I remember when I first started going to chiropractic, well, not first, a couple of months after going to chiropractic, and I realized I was getting better, is I went on a walk, and I actually enjoyed the walk. The walk was it was fun, and I could walk a little quicker and a little longer. Wow, I've got a little bit of just stamina here. And the pain also subsided. I was having less pain. I'd get up in the morning and get out of bed and go, wow, that was easy. I don't feel as stiff this morning. And they'd be mild, but boy, you recognize it when you've lived with it for years, and now it's less. And then standing at the kitchen and cooking. I could stand there and longer. A lot of times I'd bring a stool up. I just got used to that. I had my stool up at the counter, and that's where I sat, and I chopped and cooked, and I wouldn't bother with the stool. I could stand there. When I began to make the nutritional changes that Dr. Thaddeus, recommended to me, now again, not initially, because my body freaked out for the first 2 weeks, and then it settled in. So let's say 30 days into it. of this nutritional changes that I was making, the first thing I noticed was I had more energy. I get up in the day, I can go longer, I can go for longer periods of time. I can go work in the garden for longer than, if I worked longer than an hour in the garden, I'd pay a price for that. So I had to really, pace myself. But keep in mind, there's a time when I couldn't work in the garden at all. So I was happy to be able to work a couple hours a day separated by breaks. So here I am now, I'm out there for longer periods of time. And I come back in and I can go make dinner. I don't have to have a lie down break, in between. So more energy, overall just less pain. That started at about 4 to 6 weeks of the nutritional changes and then have just continued to snowball to get better and better. Even though I've been doing this for 9 years, I still experience improvements in my health. My hairdresser 2 years ago told me, Melonie, and she's been my same hairdresser forever, and she says, have you noticed your hair's getting thicker? Well, she tells me this, I'm 66 years old. Well, your hair doesn't get thicker when you're 66. My dental hygienist just told me I've been going in, 3 times a year to have my teeth cleaned because I have extra plaque buildup. And she said, there isn't that much this time. Why don't we just put you to twice a year? Well, that's sweet. There's a savings of money right there. Twice a year? She says, yeah, you don't need to come in more often. And I've been doing that, and I noticed that I don't have the same, 3 times a year, I couldn't wait. That third time is like it's time, or that next time, it's like I'm ready to go. But now so it's little subtle changes that I still am noticing. It didn't all happen and then just stop in 1 year. It continues. Something that I can do easier now is, again, I want to go back to walking because I can power walk. And I found gradually I'd go from just a walk to walking faster, faster, faster to where I'm doing this power walk. And I'm walking as fast as I can. In fact, when I walk with Dad, he'll say to me, he'll do a little jog every once in a while to keep up with me. He goes, gosh, Mom, you've really built up some pretty good, fast power walking muscles there. And I go, yeah, it just feels great. And then thinking, well, maybe I'm going to do a little bit of jogging. It never occurred to me to run. But about, I don't know, how old was I? 62 years old, I decided to start a little bit, doing a little bit of jogging. Maybe just 15 seconds out of every minute. And now I do what I call my WOG, which is a walk, run, walk, jog, and I love it, and it's fun, and it's just, and I get out into my power walk, and then I just have to start running. That's a huge change for me, huge, and that's been only, like I'd say in the last 6 years, so that happened like 4 years after making these nutritional changes. So that's one thing I noticed. But the other thing is my stamina. I can get up the other morning, like I think I mentioned, I've moved recently, and I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I just woke up with everything on my mind that I had to do. And I thought, well, I can lie here and try to go back to sleep because I get up at 6 anyway. Why don't I just get up? Because boy, the extra hour and a half, I could get a lot done. So I got up at 4:30. Thought, I'm probably going to pay for this in the afternoon. Now keep in mind, it's just a couple weeks ago. So I get up at or a week ago really. So I get up at 4:30 and I start getting stuff done. And I start unpacking and doing some food prep and and I'm doing everything. And I thought, I was going to go with my friends to dance, out dancing that night. 6:30, which is cool. It starts early, and we're home by 9:30. I'm home by 9:30, but I thought, I don't know, I'm probably going to be exhausted. I probably have to, text him and let him know I don't think I'm going to make dance tonight because I've been up since 4:30. Well, 5:30, I'm fixing dinner, and I'm raring to go. I get in the shower, I'm ready to go, and I'm out, and I'm dancing until I got to bed at 10 o'clock at night. And I went, that was a really long day, and it didn't feel like any other day. Now, I slept really well that night. I didn't wake up at 4:30 the next morning, but it's that stamina, it's that energy level that most of my friends at age 68 don't have. It's different, not just for where I was, but for a lot of my peers. If I tried to give a percentage to how things have increased, I'd have to say, if you go way back to where, when I was first really sick, and I had 5% energy, I have 100% today. And I don't mean 100 as compared to another 60-year-old. I'm saying 100 as compared to when I was in my 40s, and 50s. It's 100% more. Even when I just started chiropractic, my energy level increased, not immediately, but after a period of time, some months of working on that, I went from a 5, it gradually got up to a 10, and got up to where I got up to, a 50, 60, except when I got my flare-ups, and then I'd get slam dunked back. but then I'd get back up again. So it'd be kind of a back and forth. But I got up to 50, 60. Now I just have to say 100%. There's nothing that I want to do. I ask that of my clients. I say, what number can you give your energy level today? A 10 being doing everything you want to do in a given day. And, you know, and a 0, you're in bed, you can't get out. I'm a 10. I'm a 10. My pain at my worst with my fibromyalgia, let's say on a scale 10 is excruciating. Can you say an 11? I mean, it was horrible. In fact, just sitting here even recalling it is creepy for me to even remember that. It was awful. It's just some of the pain was just goes through your whole body. All you want to do, and then of course the migraine headaches. Oh my gosh, you just want to climb in bed and just cover yourself up. You can't function. That's a 10. Pain level, I don't have pain. It's a 0. I don't have pain today. I can't tell you last time I had a migraine headache. The tricky thing I have to be careful with is stress, because I still love doing so much, and I've moved and made a lot of changes, personal changes in my life, which can produce some stress. And if I drop off of exercise, I drop off of my supplements, I drop off of certain things, I've experienced that. And I've shared that with some of my clients, that I have to be vigilant, because I have gone through some personal changes that required me to, well, just my whole life got kind of turned upside down for a while. Moving will do that to you. Not really sure what direction I was heading in, and then working more with my son's program, and all of this, it just seemed like so much was coming at me. So I, as many of us will do, said, well, I'll skip the exercise today. Well, that's okay today, but 3 days you're still skipping exercise? My body likes that. It's gotten used to that exercise. It's not that I went off the healthy nutrition plan, but I wasn't eating as varied. I'd call cubed chicken and a cucumber a meal. And supplements were hit and miss. I started not feeling well. I got a cold, and I could feel the signs of that stress coming on, and I went, oh, yeah, this isn't something you can just do when it's convenient. And so I recommitted to it. My exercise no matter what. My supplements are there. I'd make time for food prep. In fact, my house today, I'm in the middle of cooking, putting something in the crock pot amongst all the boxes as I'm unpacking. It's like I want to unpack, but I have to have healthy food to eat. And I went for a power walk this morning, and I can't give that up. So that's real crucial for me to remember that. You know, I had my first colonoscopy just before, it was 10 years ago, just before my son came up to me with this, presented to me this nutrition change he wanted me to make. And when I went for this colonoscopy, I remember Dr. Addison said, Melonie, you have beginning stages of diverticulitis. So we need to keep an eye on that. And if you start feeling some real stomach cramping and some pains that are unusual, come in and see me. We'll need to deal with that. And I said, well, is there anything I should do? And he said, well, you know, I don't think yet you need to make any changes, but just keep an eye on it and be aware, and don't be frightened. And if this happens, but come in and see me, and then we'll take a look and we'll see what we need to do then. So I go, okay. Well, I didn't really pay too much attention to him. You know, I figured, oh, well, it sounded like maybe it would happen, and I didn't even research diverticulitis, which is not a fun thing if you get diverticulitis, beginning stages. But went about my life, and then Dr. Gallad, you know, with his support, I make all these changes. So now fast forward, a year ago, I go back, 10 years later, I'm coming back for my next checkup. And when I'm in recovery, Dr. Addison comes in, he goes, so Melonie, I saw when I was reading your chart note that when you were here 10 years ago, you had beginning stages, and I was curious to see what that was like. And he said, I found something that I've never seen, and this man is late 50s, 60s. He says, this is something I've never seen in my entire practice. You have 0 signs of diverticulitis. 0 signs. Doesn't exist. I don't see that. I want to know, do you have any idea of any changes or anything you've made in your life that why that might be true? Well, I have a chance to share my story again, and I did. I said, well, how much time do you have? And as I began to share with him, he actually said to his nurse, get a pencil and paper, would you write down some things that she's saying? And he took notes on it. So that was really a wonderful experience to have that reaffirmation that what I was doing made a difference. Another thought or thing I'm thinking is with Dr. Naris. He diagnosed it. He got me to go off of work, and told me how I had to reduce stress. I need to do stretching. I need to do the exercises. He really got me pointed in the right direction. In addition to that, though, with his knowledge, he also told me this is something you are going to be living with the rest of your life. And it wasn't he never painted to me a picture of an option of being free of it, that I needed to be aware of it and live accordingly, and whatever that meant. But it was not like, let's find a cure, let's find a way to get this, to rid you of this. I see a lot of clients I work with that have diabetes, and maybe they've been on diabetic medications for 30 years, and their doctors have told them they'll never be able to get off of it. One of my greatest experiences as a health coach is I go, okay, yeah, you got to listen to your doctor, and they do. Primary care physician is a very important part in their medical, their medical world and makeup. But I also know from my experience that they follow this program, this nutrition program, they are going to get off all their diabetic medications, and they do. And it's real exciting to see that. It's difficult for me not to get just so passionate. When it comes to helping, when I meet someone who has fibromyalgia, and knowing that they don't have to live that way. If my son were here today, I would want him to know how extremely proud I am of him. I shudder when I think where my life would be today had he not chosen the road that he took. He literally has this drive to rid the world of disease, of chronic disease. And for me to have been really the first person that he offered that to, I am just so thankful. And that I get to work with him and help inspire and support other people in the same thing, that opportunity he provides me, is incredible. And I don't know if I say that to him enough. It gives real purpose and meaning to my suffering. That all those years that I literally wish the Creator went in my life, that now I see, well, there was a purpose for all that. An incredible purpose, that all the people that He's provided me the platform to come in and to help and to inspire. I thank Him so much for that as well. Not only giving me my health back, but giving me the opportunity to be part of that for other people. If there was another thought I had that I wanted to share, it would be that I really hope that for a long, long time I get to be part of helping my son with his program in reaching as many people as we can to improve their health and to increase the quality of their life. There are times when I think, maybe if I just don't have to think about being a health coach anymore, or writing any more curriculum, or making any more videos, and no more seminars, I'll just be completely retired. Well, I am taking a 12-day vacation here where I'm not even taking my computer. I'm really going to do that. It's been 5 years since I've done that, and I'm excited about that. But this gives so much purpose to my life that I hope, as long as I'm breathing, that I am involved in some way of bringing improved health to people's life. That gives me, it's really the purpose-driven life. And that the people I can help, and they experience this wealth of good health that I keep saying, that then they in turn pass it on to other people, so that, bit by bit, we literally do change the whole course of how we look at health in this country, or lack of it. That no longer do people say, oh, well, it's just part of getting old. It doesn't have to be that. It does not have to be that. That we can stay young and vibrant as long as we tell our body. Every day we tell it, growth or decay. So today I went and did my run. It's growth today. I ate healthy. It's growth today. I'm not choosing decay. And I want to help as many people just continue to choose that.